Alright, Glenn Hughes, thanks a lot for seeing Metal Express Radio and welcome to our rockumentary series. How are you doing these days?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much.
We'll go through your career. We've picked some of your most important albums, and we'd just like you to talk a bit about the albums and where you were at the time in your career.
Yeah.
I think we'll just start out with Trapeze. I mean, you did
Sure.
3 albums, and
Right.
maybe we could do the your debut. It's from 1969. I think that's
Yeah.
the first album people know you from.
Yeah, I mean, that album was recorded, like you say, in '69 when I was very, very young. I was playing at the time bass guitar and singing second lead vocal. I wasn't the lead singer as frontman. I was kind of bass player, second singer. Very young, trying to find my way as a songwriter. We were very much influenced by the Beatles and the Moody Blues, and we were more of a harmony band, a rock band with the harmonies, you know, influenced by obviously the Beatles, and grew up in Northern England, and that album for me was the significant start of a long career.
A few years after you joined Deep Purple, but what happened with Trapeze? Why did you quit the band?
When the band went into a trio, we started to become really popular in America. We started to have a cult status, selling out 7,500, 8,000 people a night, almost to the point of breaking America, really breaking America. And when Deep Purple came in to ask me to join, Smoke on the Water was already #1, Machine Head was #1, Made in Japan was #1. They were the biggest band, even bigger than Led Zeppelin in '73. So when they asked me to join, they offered me a split percentage of the income, and it was a money decision that was too much for me to refuse. My only, thing was I wanted to be able to sing lead vocals as well. And at the time, Paul Rodgers was going to sing. Then he didn't join, and we got a guy at the time that we thought sounded a little like Paul Rodgers, which was David Coverdale. So I didn't want to leave Trapeze. I believe if I'd have stayed with Trapeze, we were going to sign with Swan Song Records, Led Zeppelin's label. I think Trapeze could have been, believe it or not, as big as Deep Purple. And it's a shame.
So how did Purple approach you? Did they just call you and ask you to join, or was there an audition or something like that?
They all came to see me individually. John Lord came with Ian Pace initially. Then Richie came to see me in London. And then John Lord, Richie and Ian Pace came to see me again in Los Angeles over about 6 months. Then finally John Lord called me to meet him in New York. They were playing Madison Square Garden with Gillan and Glover. And after the show, they sat me in, like the next day they sat me in a big conference table and asked me if I wanted to become a member of Deep Purple. I thought they were asking me to sing. And I was very kind of blown away that they wanted me to replace Roger Glover. Of course I wasn't really excited by that, because I want to sing. So I said I would only join Deep Purple if I was going to be able to sing lead vocals as well as the other singer.
What was it like, being in a band with another vocalist? I mean, with David Coverdale. Would you have preferred to do that all by yourself, the singing?
Well, believe it or not, actually I'm not that greedy. I always loved the idea of having 2 lead singers. Bands have been doing it for 40 years. Crosby, Stills and Nash did it really, really well. Humble Pie did it really well. Three Dog Night did it well in the 70s, and there were a few bands that were doing these 2 lead singers. But I think the defining moment in the 70s of the dual lead singer was Hughes and Coverdale. I believe that was the finest preparation for the future of the development of the 2 lead singers. So David and I really did well.
The first album you did with Deep Purple is a classic. It's a fantastic album. What was it like writing the music for Burn with the guys?
Well, it was great. I mean, we all went to Clearwell Castle in Wales. We did the preparation in '73. We was at the castle for a month, and we wrote all the songs in the dungeon. 16th century, 14th century castle, was it, Rob? Something like that. Really old castle, a lot of seances, a lot of Richie Blackmore freaking people out. That's what he was good at. The album kind of got a commentary. Looks like it's kind of this whole thing about a witch being burned. Burn, you know. Richie came up with the title. He liked that title, Burn. He wanted to call the album Burn. So, and it's a great cover. And the album sold close to 3 million copies.
And then there is the Califonia Jam. It's a legendary gig. What do you recall from playing that?
It was the band Mark III at its finest, peak form. This is about a year before Richie left. This is the band on their second American tour, when the camaraderie and the friendship was very strong. We had a lot of fun. You can see that. Anytime that Deep Purple, in that period, were in a situation where it was going to be a showcase to thousands of people, something always big happened, and that concert was a very big event.
Is it true, the story that Richie locked himself in and refused to play before it got dark or something like that?
100% true. 100% true. If you notice, halfway through the show, he changes his clothes, because Blackmore never used to go on without his black satin, always black satin. But he's playing right there with his jeans on and his jacket. That's his everyday wear. He didn't have time to change his clothes until the drum solo, when he got into his stage costume. This is the most angry I'd ever seen Richie Blackmore play. As angry, you noticed he wasn't happy. You noticed he wasn't smiling. You know.
They're smashing up the camera as well.
That's part of his persona. Is dark, and he plays a great character.
After 3 albums with Deep Purple, Purple broke up. Everybody knows about that. And then you started your solo career, and in '77 you released your first solo album. It's called Play Me Out.
A very strong departure from rock music. It's a acid, trippy, funky, blue-eyed soul album with orchestra and girl singers, and it is a genuine slice of Glenn Hughes that people need to know who I am, and that really is a great slice of who I am, who I was for sure. I mean, this is a record that I'm very, very, very proud of. It's a very, very documentary feeling of how I felt at that time. There's a lot of things going on that record. I broke up with my girlfriend. The band had broken up in Deep Purple. I was in a kind of a semi-meditated, trippy drug place. And it felt good at the time. But I lost control. But this is an album that is, for the collector of Glenn Hughes that needs to know more about my voice, that's probably the one they should pick up.
And let's move to '82, the Use and Thrall album. It's a great album, and I know you're about to make another one, or you have made it already.
Yeah, we're making it right now. Cool. Now, this album, when I signed with Epic Records, Sony Records, the president of the label came to me and he heard the album and said, "This album is so good, we probably won't need to promote it." That's how good it was. But we were hell bent on we were pretty fucked up back then, Pat and I. We were getting pretty intensely into cocaine and booze. But it's a great album, very eccentric. It's got a lot of different formats of rock, as the new album does. Pat Thrall is probably one of the greatest guitar players on the planet, and one of my best friends. And this album, I think, every musician friend that I know, or every musician I meet, 80% have this album. It's a musician's album.
Well, it's a fantastic album. Why did it take so long for you guys to come together and make another album?
We needed to grow, and I needed to... Patrol now lives in New York, and well, he actually lives in Vegas now. I live in Los Angeles. Pat is a very successful editor for music. He edits Stevie Wonder, George Michael, Billy Joel, Stevie Wonder, and I live in Los Angeles, where I'm a crazy songwriter. And after many years of record executives asking us to do an album again, we started making the album right before 9/11 happened in America. And I flew to New York, and the next month 9/11 happened, so I didn't go back to New York. And now we're just completing the album. It's coming next year, 2007.
Well, in '86 you joined Tony Iommy for a Black Sabbath album, Seventh Star. How did that happen? I mean, Glenn Hughes on a Black Sabbath album.
Tony Iommy, you should know that we come from Birmingham. All of Sabbath are like family to me. All of the guys are very close to me. From Trapeze, I've known Sabbath. When we did Califonia Jam, Sabbath with the band before us, I'd been up all night with Tony and Ozzy. They're really good friends of mine, and I've known these guys like my family since I was 17. So when Tony was making a solo album, not a Black Sabbath album, it's supposed to be a solo album, he called Dio, and he called Rob Halford, I think Roger Daltrey, and I was the first guy to sing in the studio. But I wrote a lot of songs the first week, which are these, and he decided that he wanted me to sing on the whole record. Right before the album came out, Warner Brothers, I think, got a little greedy and wanted to call it Black Sabbath, featuring Tony Iommy. Tony wasn't happy about that, and neither was I. Therefore, I had to go on the road and sing Iron Man and War Pigs, something I didn't feel comfortable with. I think those songs are sung great by Ozzy, but I didn't particularly enjoy singing them at that time, because I'm not the kind of singer that does that. So consequently, the tour was miserable for me. I had a problem on the road where I got into a fight with the tour manager, and I damaged my nose. I had this bone here went into my nose, and he hit me so hard that it caused blood to flow in my throat and dry. Really? And I couldn't speak for 3 months. So that's why that tour was unsuccessful.
Any highlights of the album? Favorite
Oh
tracks?
God, I think No Stranger to Love. I think Angry Heart.
Well, then in '93, another solo album from Glenn Hughes. It's called Blues.
Yeah. My first sober album. I just come out of the Betty Ford Clinic. I was now clean and sober, free from the drugs. I wanted to write an album. All these songs are about recovery from drug addiction. Life of Misery, You Don't Have to Save Me Anymore, So Much Love to Give, Have You Read the Book? It's all seriously about recovery. And I needed to make this record for my own sake. Needed to make a strong album about the way I feel about it. And look at the list of people I thanked. I mean, it goes on forever. Absolutely goes on forever. I thank the Betty Ford Center. I thank my doctors. I thank my dentists. I'm thanking everybody. I think I've thanked the whole world. That's how grateful I was. I'd like you to play from this album, Life of Misery.
Next solo album, we have picked this Addiction from '96. I mean, that title, is
Same
that
thing.
drug related as well?
This is 5 years later. I did this one, but this is another album that I wanted to address the depths and darkness. Over about every 5 years, I like to go back and address the dangers of You know, I think if I forget what it was like for me to be on drugs, then I'm not doing my job. I have to remember how dark it was. So when I, you know, look at the titles, addiction, down, you know, the death of me. I mean, Jesus Christ. I don't want to live that way again. I mean, that's the song I'd like you to play. I don't want to live that way again. It's so... The lyric to me, there's a lyric on this. It says, so I pull down the shutters and I wave my resistance and I wait for the sirens that will ring through my head. I was cast as a leper. Now I've replaced my religion and I don't want to live that way again. And it just means moving forward. And that really means everything to me.
Okay, and the 1996 Depth Sessions, this album was released in 2004.
Yes.
Finally, but it was recorded the same year you released Addiction,
yes.
right?
Tony and I, as you know, have been friends for years, and when I went to London in 96 to promote Addiction, Tony called me to his home and we started to write some songs. Those first 8 songs were going to be us on about 12 or 13 songs we were going to write for an album. But then Tony got a call from Ozzy and Sharon to reform Sabbath in 98. So this was put on hold. But whilst this was put on hold, somebody got a copy of this and bootlegged it. Called Eighth Star, the bootleg. So, unfortunately, this got bootlegged, but now what Tony did is he remixed it and remastered it, and what you have is the finished Depth Sessions. I think it's interesting. Most of this stuff is written about a girl that I'd fallen out with, a really great girl I met in Sweden, and I was with her for 2 years, and when she finished with me, it damn near killed me. So I started to write about it, and it's all on there. I like to write about things that really happen.
Let's move on to another solo album. This is Building the Machine from 2001.
This is the album when I wrote when I met my wife. For me, one of my better albums. It's a start of a new beginning, a career change. I started to get funky again and feel really comfortable playing songs like Inside and man, Beyond the Numb. These songs are so cool. I mean, it's just a great thing. I wrote a song called Big Sky about a friend of mine who passed away, one of my really, really good friends. I don't know, man. It's a good record. It's a good spiritual album for me.
You've been involved with a lot of musicians, of course, and a lot of projects. And one quite successful, I guess, is the Hughes and Turner project. This is your first album from 2002.
Mm-hmm. No, Joe is... This album was recorded for pretty much a Japanese audience. Joe is popular in Japan. Rainbow is very big. And this album was pretty much recorded for that marketplace. So, and we did 2 records together, myself and Joe. And I felt at the end of the second record we had said what we needed to say. I didn't think a third record was going to be appropriate, so we decided to call it a day. Joe is a very great guy and a really dear friend of mine, but we need to go our separate ways. I like to sing alone now. It's important for me to do that, and I think Joe should do the same. He's a good guy. He's very funny.
The next thing from Glenn Hughes is another soul album coming out this year.
June the 9th.
Well, it's called Music for the Divine.
That's correct. That's right. And it's my most passionate, beautiful album. It is an album rich and deep in colors and orchestrations and organic sonic sounds that I haven't done in a long, long, long time. It's very deep in spiritual content, not talking so much about religion, but talking about the growth of people around me and myself. There's a lot of love on this album that was recorded in Chad Smith's house from Red Hot Chili Peppers, and there's a lot of love on the album, a lot of feeling, a lot of conscious contact with my higher power. There's a lot of channeling, I think, that is very deep. It's kind of almost a feeling of a Beatles type of rock record. It's very melodic and it's very harmonious and it's very funky.